Good afternoon to you all. To start with the topic now, only Shreya you have joined.
Yes, ma'am.
I think you are the only person. Anyhow, let me start with the class. And in today's class, our point of discussion will center around block 5. You know that for this paper, Indian culture perspective for tourism. We have 9 units, and in the last 4 classes, we have covered 4 blocks, that is, introducing Indian culture, social structure, fine arts, and yesterday's class was on popular culture. And in today's class, we have to cover the fifth block, and it contains 4 units. The name of the block is architecture. And the 4 units, it includes the main architectural style, the regional architecture, functional categories in architecture, and the last unit is sculpture. So this block is exclusively for architecture and sculpture. Please remember that as the paper is exclusively on Indian culture, architecture constitutes one of the important postulate of Indian cultural heritage. Art and architecture are perhaps the most lasting expression of culture of a people. So, art and architecture is the lasting expression of the culture of the people. So, it has got a lasting impact. They are also visibly most attractive. If we look at the architectural semblances, we find out they are visibly very attractive. This architecture is the identification of the culture of a region, of the culture of a people. Therefore, art and architecture, it constitutes a very, very important aspect, and as they are visibly very attractive, as architecture is visibly attractive, so definitely it has got its tourist importance. The tourists, they flock to the place of architectural importance to have a view of the architecture. The architecture may be of religious architecture, it may be of civil architecture, it may be of historical architecture. So there are different types of architectures, and because of their attractive visibility, the tourists like to visit the places of architectural importance. And as I had told you, art and architecture are really the manifestation of the culture of a period, and also they reflect the social picture also. And when I am going to start with the Indian architectural heritage, my point will be discussed under 3 headings: the main architectural style in the ancient phase of Indian history, the architectural style of medieval period of Indian history, and the architectural style of the modern period, the colonial period, and the post-independence period, pre-independence and post-independence period. While I was discussing about the block 1. You know that block 1 was introducing Indian culture. So, in the past class, when I tried to give you a brief outline of Indian culture, my first point of discussion was on the earliest civilization of India, that is Harappan civilization, and as it grew and flourished on the bank of the river Indus, therefore it is otherwise called as the Indus Valley civilization. flourishing both in India and Pakistan. The period was from circa 2500 BCE to circa 1500 BCE. So as you know that this Harappan culture, we find out that there was the first architectural importance because it was an urban type civilization. Of course, before Harappan civilization, we find out the presence of Mesopotamian civilization in Central Asia and Nile Valley civilization in Egypt in India, but in case of India, as you know, by the time the world boundary of India, it included Pakistan and your northeastern Afghanistan. And in this northwestern portion of India in general, we find out Harappan culture. It is called Harappan culture because the first archaeological remains of this culture was discovered from a place called Harappa. Harappa is now in Pakistan. And this Harappan culture, we find out the remains, the archaeological remains, which has been come to limelight, which has been excavated by the archaeologists. We find out that there we find out the different types of architecture, and the Harappan architecture is mainly a residential architecture minded. The culture was not a pastoral culture, it was a rural, it was an urban culture. And in this urban culture, the system of town planning, we find out in various sites, Harappan sites of Dholavira, Harappa, Mohenjo-daro, Channu-daro, Kalingbangan, Mundigok. These are the names of different places, both in India and Pakistan, where the remains of Harappan civilization has been discovered. And if you visit these Harappan sites, you will be simply impressed with their town planning, the structure, the town planning structure, their city life, their civic sense, their sanitary system, their roads. There are roads and marketplaces. So all these things, we find out that Harappan architecture, it in very, very ancient time, around 5,000 years back, because now it is 2023 plus 2,500, it is almost around 5,000 years back, the architectural remains of Harappan Valley or Harappan civilization, Indus Valley civilization, it gives us sufficient idea about the Indian architectural heritage. So the Indian architectural heritage dates back to remote past when our early ancestors they had sufficient knowledge about their town planning, the city life, very scientific way of city life. You will not find out any carved road. All the roads were straight and wide. Their scientific sanitary system, the construction of the houses, their courtyard, the ventilation system, the light and air in the houses, they were very, very scientific, unlike us. So this architecture, the residential architecture of Harappan planning, town planning, and we find out also the public architecture like a big hall has been discovered, and it is presumed that it was meant for the conservation of the grains for future conservation. So the granary, and another important thing, that is your great bath at Mohenjo-daro, to a great extent, which has got similarity with modern swimming pool system. So the great bath, the structure of the Great Bath, which has been excavated from Mohenjo-daro, it gives us a very high idea about the hygienic sense of the Indus people. So the system of drainage system, how to drain out the used water and the entry of the fresh water and the gallery, around the structure for the observation of a bath. This really reminds us the modern swimming pool system. So we may be little bit more advanced in our technical setup, but without a technical setup, in the hygienic way, how the Harappan people they maintained a very good standard of life, hygienic standard of life. It is very much evident from these structures. You see, we are discussing about the residential structures belonging to Harappan period, and that was the starting point of Indian history. And as you know, that being the starting point of Indian history, the high standard of city life, the high standard of town life, which the Harappan people they now managed, it gives us, it speaks of their very sound knowledge in the system of architecture. Coming to the second civilization, Vedic civilization, as it was pastoral in character, as the people of Vedic civilization, they like to live amidst the natural surrounding. So naturally, no archaeological remains of this civilization has been found out. But what has been found out? A more eternal contribution was the Vedas. The compilation of the book Vedas or the literature, Vedic literature, so it has of course got no architectural significance. It has got a literary significance. So after Harappan civilization, we find out gradually the concept of kingdom, the concept of your what? Not kingdom, concept of Janapada, or whose translation is kingdom, it ushered in the political history of India. It now began to take a concrete shape. When the political history of India, it began to take a concrete shape, and it was at this time in 6th century BC, as I had told you earlier, while making you acquainted with the Indian culture, I told you in 6th century BC, there was the birth of two religions in India. One is Buddhism and the second one is Jainism. Jainism has remained confined to India, whereas Buddhism has crossed the boundary of India and it is now the religion of China, Japan, Thailand, Myanmar, in a number of South Eastern countries, you will find out the presence of Buddhism. And now, with the emergence of Buddhism, we find out the architectural, religious architecture, it now began to rise up its head. So the ancient religious architecture first comes in this category, the Buddhist religious monuments. The first is stupas. We come across with several stupas. You might remember these stupas are very interesting, and the visitors all over the world they visit different stupas which are situated in various parts of India, in Sarnath, in Sanchi, in Maski, Bhabru. So you will find out the presence of Buddhist stupa. You can ask me the question, madam, what is a stupa? Stupa means, before going to make you understand about stupa, I must tell you what is a stupa. When a body of a human, I now died. After my death, either my body will be burnt or it will be buried. But in maximum religion, you will find out the burial of the body, and Hindus only they burn the body. If the body is buried, the five important portions of the body they do not decay. One is your hair, another is nail, the third is your bone. So bone, hair, nail, bone, they do not get destroyed. So the practice of preserving the remains of an important personality under a heap of accumulated earth, it has been in practice for a long time. And it was during the time of Ashok. You know, Ashok was a famous Buddhist king in India. He now followed the practice of construction of stupas. So you will find out the preservation either on a box, a small box, the preservation of Buddha's hair, or the preservation of Buddha's your nail, or the preservation of the bones. So on the preservation of the material remains of a body, and there is the construction of a stupa, that is, and if we construct a structure on the mortal remains of Lord Buddha, that is called stupa, and the worship of stupa, it is a place of pilgrimage for the Buddhists. They worship stupa, and on the top of the Buddhist stupa, on the body of the Buddhist stupa, you will find out various types of decorative elements. So various decorative elements are being created by the artist, by the architects, to make the stupa attractive. And the main stupas in India, which the tourists they like to visit, are found at Bodh Gaya, Sanchi, Bhurut, Amaravati, Nagarjuna Kunda, etc., etc. So one of the important, so stupa is another form of ancient religious monuments, and it is mainly associated with Buddhism. Then we find out the rock cut architecture. Now, both the Buddhists and the Jainas, the followers of two religions, followers of Buddhism are called Buddhist, followers of Jainism are called Jains. So both Buddhist and the Jains built chaityas and viharas. So not only the stupas, but also the chaityas and viharas as the places of worship. A chaitya is a shrine cell where a stupa or a votive stupa is placed in the center. So Chaitya is a shrine cell where you will find out a stupa, means some mortal remains of the body of Buddha is placed inside the center. And we find out that these chaityas are very popular chaityas, and at the same time also you will find out the viharas. The viharas are there where primarily the cut out of the rocks for residence of the monks. So, for the residential purpose of the Buddhist monks, rocks were cut, and in that rock cut caves, the monks used to stay what is called as biharas. In a bihara, they have a number of small square cells. You will cut the rock into small cells, small square cells where the monks, Buddhist monks, they used to live. The earliest biharas you will find out in Western India, in Bhaja, Ajanta, Nashik, Karle, etc. So now we find out that after Harappan architecture, during the time of Mauryan rule, Maurya is the name of an Indian dynasty, and Ashok belonged to this dynasty, and it was during his time who for the first time used stones in the architecture. Prior to Ashok, there was the use of wood. So wood was used in architecture, for which we do not, because wood is not permanent. So we do not find out any permanence in the architecture. Only the stone architecture, they have survived till the date. So now after Ashok, a number of Buddhist stupas, chaityas and viharas, they began to make their emergence, and now it has drawn the attention of the tourists. So these architectures of ancient time, definitely they are very important places of tourist importance. Then I told you that besides this, the Jain architecture. The Jainas, they are a small religious community in India. In Bhubaneswar, you will find out the Jaina rock cut caves at Khandagiri and at Udaygiri. You will find out the Jaina places of pilgrimage at Avalokiteshwara, at Sravana Belgola in south. So my point is this, that the religious architecture, they now begin to make their emergence in the early phase of Indian history, and because they were constructed with stone, therefore till the date they are in permanent form. Now, I had pointed you earlier that in ancient India, two dynasties, they had achieved prominence. One is your Mauryan dynasty, another is your Gupta dynasty. And it was during the time of the Guptas, the Hindu religion began to take a concrete shape. The Hindu religion was already there. Since Harappan time, it was in a rudimentary form, but it got established during the time of Vedic civilization, and the Gupta rulers, they were patrons of Hinduism. So we find out that they now tried to construct the Hindu temples. So temples are the residential structures for Hindu house of gods. So temple architecture, or the temples meant for the Hindu gods and goddesses, they now begin to appear. So various temples in various parts of India, the Savatara temple, the Shiva temple at a place called Kho, the Parvati temple at Nachan Uttara. So there are various temples, though they were small in size, but the architectural style of these temples were so attractive that even till today, the tourists like to visit these temples for their brilliant architectural designs. So this Gupta age is famous for temple architecture. The temples previously, before Gupta rule, the temples in India, they were flat the roof was flat. But now from the Gupta time, the top of the temple, it now began to take a curvy linear shape. So we find out the curvilinear shape of the Hindu temples. It now owes its origin to the Gupta phase of ancient Indian history. The heart of the temple was a small shrine room, what is called as the main room, the Garbhagriha, containing the chief image of the Lord. This opened into the hall for the worshippers. In front of that room, you will find out a hall or mandap. It was meant for the worshippers who will be assembled there to worship gods and goddesses. Originally a separate building, hall was there, but in course of time, it now mixed up with the main temple. The whole was set in a rectangular courtyard and was often placed in a raised platform. So my point is that if we look at the architectural style of ancient period, we find out the first thing, as I told you, in Harappan civilization, it was mainly the residential structure, which were not only systematic, but they were very created, or they were constructed in a very planned and disciplined manner. Then we come across the religious Buddhist architecture of stupa, chaitya, vihara, and similarly also in Jainism, we come across with these structures. And then in Gupta period, the so-called Hindu temple architecture, what we find out in the present day temple, it now begin to take a very proper shape. the medieval period, my first point of discussion, as you know, it is your Unit 14. Unit 14 deals with the main architectural style of India. Then we will have the 15th unit discussing or focusing on the regional architecture. So when we are discussing about the main architectural style, I told you about the ancient style, the Buddhist religious architecture, Jaina religious architecture, Hindu religious architecture or the Hindu temples. Then we had our discussion on the town planning and the very developed city life of your Harappan culture. The medieval period in Indian history, it is marked with the establishment of Muslim rule. The Muslims were not the original Indians. They came from Central Asia and conquering various parts of India. Gradually, they now became the master of the soil, and in course of time, with the march of time, with their long stay in this land, they became the son of the soil. So when we are going to end this period, which is dominated by Muslim predominance, is called as the medieval period of Indian history. And this medieval period of Indian history, we find out it is otherwise called as Indo-Islamic architecture. So the medieval Indian history, from architectural standpoint, it is called the Indo-Islamic architecture. You see, when the people of two different communities, two different religion, they stay together, ultimately there happens the cultural exchange. The Muslims were the outsiders. They came from Central Asia. They had a separate religion, separate culture, separate heritage, and staying in India, they came in contact with the Indians. So out of the social contact, there arose some cultural developments which had its manifestation in the architectural style also. So Indo-Islamic architecture, they now, the architecture which created the building structure, the religious structure which came into existence during this picture was not the typical Indian style, but it was having some Islamic influences on it. Therefore, it is called as the Indo-Islamic architecture. And the construction, for example, in this architecture, you will find out the construction of a dome. Almost in all the Muslim architecture, you will find out the roof is on the domical shape. Then there are minars. In the place of a pillar, you will find out the presence of minars. And the materials commonly used for plastering building was gypsum. The decorative art in Islamic building served the purpose of concealing the structure behind the motifs than to revealing it. You will find out three important things: calligraphy, geometry, and foliation. So certain calligraphy was an important element of the decorative art in the building of this period. The Quranic sayings are inscribed on the building in an angular, sober, and monumental script called Kufi. So calligraphy, you will find out the sayings or the quotes from Quran, which are engraved on the building in an angular, sober, and monumental script. And that particular script is called Kufi, and this is part of the building. It is found out, the calligraphy is found on the doors, ceilings, wall panels, niches, and these are used in the decorative elements. The geometric shapes in abstract form are also used for decoration purpose. The motif indicates, the motifs indicate corporation of visual principle of symmetry and continuous pattern. The foliation or the dominant form of decoration employed in building, it is characterized with continuous stem with splits regularly producing a series of leafy secondary stems. So stems, leaves, these are also included in the pollination decorative form. So in the Indo-Islamic architecture of early phase, you generally, if we look at the Indian history from 1206 up to 1526, 320 years, it is called the early Sultanate period. You will find out the Indo-Islamic architecture, or they were mainly the Indo-Turkish ruler. From 1526, the Mughals, they now came. The Mughals, they were also great builders. So the Mughal rule in India, we find out during the time they were having a very rich heritage. Rich Mughals were having rich cultural heritage. They had their own style. The foundation of a new style of architecture in India, it had already begun from 13th century AD with the establishment of Muslim rule. But again, with the establishment of, with the arrival of the Mughals, we find out that there was so much of development. Mind it, the golden Mughal period in Indian history, it is full up with the glorious architectural heritage. And all those places, the places where you will find out the Mughal architecture, they are even till today. The great Taj Mahal, you must have heard the name of Taj Mahal in India, situated in the province of Agra, situated in the area of Agra in the state of Uttar Pradesh, and there you will find out a dream on marble. So, along with Taj Mahal, Diwani Khas, Diwani Am, Jami Masjid, Moti Masjid, Fatehpur Sikri in Agra. So that is a long history. There were six consecutive rulers on the Mughal throne who were great Mughals, and others, the rest were, they were not prominent. It was during the time of the Mughal rule of Akbar. Akbar had his capital 18 miles away from Agra, where Taj Mahal is situated. The place is called Fatehpur Sikri. There you will find out the great Ibadat Khana, where there was, which was meant for religious discussion, Alai Darwaja, a very Buland Darwaja, not Alai Darwaja, Buland Darwaja. Suppose in the early period, I had not told you, the Kutab Minar, Alai Darwaja in Delhi, you will find out the tomb of Nijamuddin, Nijamuddin Aulia. These are very important architectural monuments of the early Muslim period. And so far as the Mughal period is concerned, they had an uniqueness of their own. So their architectural site and the presence, the pattern and the marble arcades, the arcs, the domes, they are so attractive. The Mughals were really the connoisseur of architecture, the connoisseur of art and culture, for which the Mughal architecture now reached the topmost point of glory and glamour. Now, coming to the, as I told you, I'm not going to have more discussion, but at least on the reign of Shahjahan's reign is marked, the period of Shahjahan is marked with extensive architectural works in his favorite building material, that is marble. The Taj Mahal is undoubtedly Shahjahan's the grandest and the most well-known project, and Taj Mahal is a building. I am not going to give you the description. You can see in the net where is Taj Mahal and what are the specific. It is called as a dream on marble. Now, coming to the colonial period, as you know, the sea route to India, it was discovered by the Portuguese sailor Vasco da Gama. But prior to that, in 4th century of Christian era, according to tradition of Kerala, Kerala is the southernmost state of India, that Kerala, a colony of Syrians headed by a merchant named Kenai Thomas or Thomas Cannon came to Kranagar and settled in the city. That immediately after the demise of Jesus Christ, now one Syrian monk, he came to Kerala and there he settled in ancient time. Thomas and his courtiers were well received by the ruler of Kerala, who now gave him a piece of land, and there he started his first church. So the building activity in British India, it was dominated by the churches and the public buildings. But long before the establishment of colonial power in 4th century AD, we find out the presence of a Christian monk in Kerala, and he had constructed one church. What is the early Indian churches were built in Kerala, and Saint Thomas Church, even it today, it stands as in so Kerala evolved. Churches with rectangular channel and nave began to be built, and even till today, you find out a lot of architecture in Kerala. The earliest surviving specimen of a European style of church in India is located at Cochin. Cochin is a place in Kerala. It was built in 1500. 10 and along with the establishment of a factory by Albuquerque. This church was used in the body by Vasco da Gama. Later, it came under the British Anglican Church. When we are discussing about the colonial architecture, you will come across different types of churches, means the religious structures, because the colonialists or the British people, they were Christians. So like during the Muslim rule, you will find out the construction of your tombs in various parts of India. It was during the time of English rule in India, the church culture, it now became prevalent in various parts of India. Besides the construction of the churches, we find out the different types of public buildings. Calcutta was, or modern Kolkata, it's an old name was Calcutta. Calcutta was the capital, and even till today, if you will visit Calcutta, you will find out a great structure, the Victoria Memorial. It is a place of tourism, or it is a place of attraction, tourist importance, and Victoria Memorial. You will find out the Fort William, you will find out the Writers Building. So these are the clear example of Indo-European architecture. So, in the place of Indo-Islamic architecture of medieval India, we can find out Indo-European architecture of colonial period or pre-independence India. It is not only in Calcutta, but in other three, the English people had their three centers. Calcutta was the main center, but in south, in Madras or modern Chennai, and in Bombay or modern Mumbai in the west, they had their centers. Also, you will find out the buildings like Madras Christian College, and in Mumbai, the Elphinstone College, the your museum building, a lots of Fort Saint David at Madras, and in Mumbai also you will find out the colonial buildings which stand as a glaring example to the colonial architecture, otherwise called as the Indo-European architecture. So when I am going to give you idea about the main architectural style of India, I gave you the name of some important place, not all, some important places. And besides this, there are also a number of places where you will find out the colonial architecture. The Parliament building, as you know, Delhi, which is now the capital of India, it was prior to Delhi, Calcutta was the capital. In 1912, the capital of India was shifted from Calcutta in the eastern India to Delhi in North India. And it was the plan of Delhi. It was chalked out by the great English architect Edward Lutyens. So the present Supreme Court, the Parliament House, the old Parliament House, the residential structure of the president, all these structures, the India Gate, the North Block, South Block, means the Central Secretariat, all these buildings, they are not typically Indian architecture. Rather, they now bear the influence of Indo-European architecture. So the colonial architecture, what you find out, they are the examples. They are the example of Indo-European architecture. So my point is this, that when we are making an assessment of national architecture or the main architecture, these are some of the references that I gave you. In course of my discussion, repeatedly I have referred you that India is a land of diversity. We find out different regions. As you know, we have 28 states and 8 union territories, and each state, almost each area, has their own regional identification mark so far as the dress habit, the food habit, the architectural style is concerned. So the next point of our discussion, I gave you a broad idea about unit, about unit 14. Now our point of discussion will be unit 15. And the unit 15 will center around the regional architecture. That means the architectural style, the characteristics of the architectural style of different regions of India. So when we are going to have our discussion on the architectural style of the different regions of India, and there we find out, what do we find out? That we find out that in ancient times, so far as regional style of architecture is concerned, we can divide it, we can bifurcate it into two categories, the residential structures and the religious monuments. So the residential structure and the religious monuments. But the religious monuments are more attractive than that of the residential structures. So here we find out again the Buddhist stupas. The famous stupa of Sanchi. Sanchi is the name of a place. It is situated in a state of India called Madhya Pradesh. Madhya means the middle. So it is situated in the central part of India, and the Sanchi Stupa. So it is one of the most famous stupa sites in India. It has 3 stupas. It is a very big boundary with 3 stupas, all the gateways around them. But the most famous is the Great Stupa, which was originally made of bricks by Ashok in 2050 BC, 250 BC. I had told you earlier, the ruler Ashok of ancient India deserves special mention in this background because he for the first time used the stones in architecture, and he now started, he was a Buddhist king, he started constructing stupas, and the original stupa at Sanchi was made by Ashok in 250 BCE. And here we find out the Buddha, who is the founder of Buddhism in India, the four great events of his life, like the birth of Buddha, the attainment of knowledge, and the preaching of knowledge, what is called Dharma Chakra Pravartana in their language, and last is the Mahaparinirvana or the death. So the four great events of Buddha's life, they have been displayed. The relief of Sanchi Stupa displays these type of scenes on the walls. The lotus has been prominently and beautifully carved out as ornamentation. You will find out the carving out of the lotus flower and a unique representation of forest animals in a manner in which it looks as if the whole animal world has come forward to have or to worship Lord Buddha. So these type of representations on the wall of the stupa, the presentation of forest animals in groups as if they have come to worship Buddha, the lotus flower, the representation of animals like camel, ox, are some of the important manifestation decorative elements, and besides these there are the four important scenes related to the life of Buddha. So when you are reading the places of pilgrimage in the medieval Indian architectural style, you must medieval Indian architectural style with specific reference to different regions. You can make your reference to Sanchi Stupa, then Nagarjuna Stupa. Nagarjuna Stupa is situated in South India, and there you will find out the beautiful panels. The panels, what are the picture? The birth of Buddha under the shade of a flowering tree. The gods praying Buddha or Bodhisattva to take their birth on this earth. Then Buddha's entry into his mother's womb in the form of a white elephant. So these are all the descriptions which is present in the Buddhist religious book. The Buddhist religious book is Tripitaka. That is like your Quran in Islam, then Bible in Christianity, then you'll find out Tripitaka is for the Buddhist. You will find out the representation of these scenes in Nagarjuna Stupa. Then we find out rock cut architecture. I had mentioned about this rock cut architecture while discussing the main national type, and in the regional style also. We find out at Bhaja cave, Karla cave, you will find out the rock cut architecture, and the rocks were cut into small caves, and those caves were meant for the residential dwellings of the monks. So for the residential dwellings of the monks, there were rock cut architecture. And you will find out this rock cut architecture, besides the Buddhist architecture near Ellora, in the state of Maharashtra, entire one rock has been cut into a single temple. The name of the temple is Kailasnath Temple. So the name of the temple is Kailasnath Temple. It is in Ellora, and it is a place must visit. It is a must visit place for the tourists. And today in the net, after my class, it is a UNESCO heritage site. UNESCO has tagged the heritage site to this rock cut architecture of Ellora, and it is a temple architecture, Kailasnath temple architecture. So in the regional style also, you will find out the rock cut architecture, and the Karla cave also you will find out the cave temples. As I told you, rock cut cave temples, the Kailasnath temple, and also more impressive are the later cave temples at Ajanta. So in Ajanta and Ellora, you will find out the rock cut architecture and the rock cut temples. Then we find out that in South India at Mamallapuram, we find out that there are also the sea coast 17 temples, where 17 temples, no one very large in size, but carved out on hillocks of granite under the patronage of the kings. So you will find out the presence of 17 small temples, really worth visiting. The latest cave temples of importance are those of Elephanta. Elephanta is a beautiful island site. I have visited it. It is so beautiful. It is famous for the sculpture inside the cave. You will find out the sculptural representation, especially of the great Trimurti figure of Lord Shiva. So how the ancient artisans, they carved out these type of images within the walls of a rock. So rocks were cut into temples, rocks were cut with different types of figures, rocks were cut into residential caves. So cutting a rock into this type of architectural monument is not a very easy task. But we find out the artisans of ancient India, really, they now deserve the credit. They now deserve the credit that to what extent they were qualified and their artistic skill, architectural skill were of so high standard that even till today they have stood as silent witness to the architectural skill of our ancestors. Then we coming to the temples. So we come across with a temple site at the Jandial in Takshashila. The Jandial temple was a Zoroastrian religious temple. This Takshashila, please remember, now its modern identification is Taxila, Taxila. It is situated now in Pakistan, but at one time it was the part of India. And in ancient time, Takhasila had a very famous university. And in ancient time, we find out in a place called Jandial at Takhasila, there was a temple. And that was an ancient temple of the Zoroastrians, I told you, who are called as Parsis. The Zoroastrians are also a people of different religion, and their temple is the fire temple. And at Jandial in Takshashila, there was a famous temple of the Gupta period, of the Zoroastrian temple. Then in the Gupta temples, as I told you, at Deoghar of Jhansi, it was a very beautiful monument. The temples were decorated with high types of sikharas. The top was very high, giving to Indian style a feeling of strength, and only in part of counteracted by the delicacy of ornate fringes. In the temple building, gained much patronage under the 6th to 8th century during the time of Pallavas and the Chalukyas. The Pallava and the Chalukya, these are the names of the dynasties, and the rulers of these dynasties who ruled in between 6th to 8th century, they had their temple buildings at the places called Badami, Kanchi, Mamallapuram. So these styles show the gradual emancipation of the architect from the techniques of carpentry and cave architecture. No more cave architecture, no more carpentry on woodwork, but they in their own way developed the temple architecture in such a way that this temple architecture formed a separate class of its own. Then the Shiva temple at Tanjavur, built by the Chola ruler, is another glowing example. Mind it, these are all the regional type. They do not come under an all India type temple style. Different temple construction, the temples which are created for the residential purpose of the Hindu gods and goddesses, their architectural style is different or differs from place to place. Each temple maintains their own regional identity marks. So the Indian temple architecture, as I told you, referred to you in Mamallapuram, Badami, Tanjavur, Kanchi, there we will find out that all these temples had their own unique identity. Now coming to the medieval period, as I had pointed you earlier, that it was mainly the Indo-Islamic architecture, but that was the main architecture. Besides this main Indo-Islamic architecture, in various parts of India, without Islamic influences, the individual style, the indigenous style also sprang up. Coming to Eastern India, in Bengal, in the Malda district of present Bengal, you will find out that there was the Bengal style of architecture. And here what happens? Now lies the remain of two principal cities on the two rivers, on the confluence of two rivers, Ganga and Mahananda. On the confluence of these two rivers lies the remains of two principality, Gaur and Pandua, which enjoyed the status of capital seat of the ruling power. And the building of Bengal here during this phase, you will find out that it was during a typical style of their own in Gaur and in Pandua. Here, the style of architecture that it developed, it was having a typical style of their own. And in the not only the Hindu style, but also the Muslim style, suppose in the Sarki kingdom at Jaunpur, here we find out that they have their own style of architecture, the Adina Masjid. So the Adina Masjid of Jaunpur, it is having the typical style. You see that Indo-Islamic architecture, it is a style. The Gouda architecture, it is a separate Indian style. The Adina Masjid of Jaunpur, it is also a separate style. Now in Western India, the Gujarat, the regional style flourished for some period of 250 years, beginning from 14th century, and the founder of Gujarat style of Indo-Islamic architecture were the governor Khilji Sultan of Delhi. So at Western India, you will find out some Indo-Islamic architecture. And now, besides that, we find out that in some finer example of this style, considerable portions of the building are the finest, in fact, the adoption from either Hindu or Jaina temples. So here in this Western India, the regional style which developed, the Gujarat style, you will find out certain adoption from the prevailing Hindu and Jaina temples. The essence of Gujarat style, we will find out it is almost with some Hindu and Jaina influence, was a manifestation of Indo-Islamic architecture in the Gujarat. In central India at Malwa. So in central India at Malwa, the Muslim rulers, they also developed their own system of architecture at Dhar and Mandu. So in the places of Dhar and Mandu, some buildings were seen at Chanderi. The buildings of Dhar and Mandur, they derive the features mainly from the Tughal architecture. So they follow some of the patterns of Indo-Islamic architecture, and also at the same time they add some of their own regional style. Now coming to Deccan, the architectural style of Deccan, you will find out in the place called Gulbarga, you will find out in a place called Bidar. So in the places like Gulbarga, Bidar, Golconda, you will find out different styles. So you see, even if they are Muslim architectures, but they differ in pattern, in style. The Gulbarga style, it is not, did not represent an distinctive style. For most of the part, they followed the contemporary architecture. The Jami Masjid, then you will find out Jami Masjid of Gulbarga is a very good example. And similar is the case with Bidar, the Madrasa Muhammad Ghusha in Bidar. It is a specific type of architecture. And Vijayanagar, another style of architecture is your, I told you, residential buildings. So in Vijayanagar, you will find out the residential Vijayanagar Palace. The picture is available in your book. So the picture which is available in your book, you will find out the city of Vijayanagar was at the height of its glory. When it was its height of its glory, the palaces, the temples, and the city had extensive waterworks and many secular buildings such as elephant stables, the Lotus Mahal, the basic elements of Vijayanagar style of architecture as use of pillars for architectural as well as for decorative purpose. You will find out the presence of different pillars, not only for decoration, but also for architectural purposes. Now we find out that numerous compositions are used in raising pillars, but the most striking one that it will resemble like a kind of horse or a hippogriff. So the way the design, you see, this is a very technical class. It requires that you must see the pictures. So in an online class, it is not possible to show you the pictures, but if you will go through the pictures, you can capture my points to a very great extent. Now, the state during the time of princely buildings, during the time of Mughal domination, we find out the Nizam of Hyderabad, the Sultan of Mysore, the Nawab of Bhopal and Oudh endowed their capital with mosques and palaces. So besides the central power was Muslim, and in regional power, Hyderabad is a very important state. Now it is one of the capitals, but the Nizam of Hyderabad, the Sultan of Mysore is a place, the Nawab of Bhopal and Oudh, they had their capitals, and in their capitals, they now made huge mosques and palaces, and till today, if you will come as a tourist to visit India, you must visit the palaces of Nizam in Hyderabad, the Mysore Palace, then Bhopal Palace, and the most spectacular, these are all Muslim structures, but the most spectacular by far is the Palace of Rajputs. Rajputs in Rajputana, Rajasthan. So in Rajasthan, during this time, you will find out that what are the things? You will find out that the Joy Vilas Palace of Maharaja of Gwalior, La Martiniere at Lucknow, the different types of palaces, forts, halls, salons, staterooms, all these things here till today. If you get an opportunity, you must visit these regional styles. So the regional style of architecture, which now developed, they had their own uniqueness. And I will be very happy in future if you get an opportunity to visit India. You must visit these places. These places of architectural importance, not only they draw the attention of these tourists for their designer decorative motifs, but also for their historic importance and the different types of characteristics they bear within them. As I told you, the Falaknama of Hyderabad, the royal palace of Nizam of Hyderabad is called Falaknama. So the Falaknama of Hyderabad, the Joyvilas Palace of Maharaja of Mysore, the La Martiniere of Lucknow. So these are some of the attractive buildings. As I had already told you, the British architecture are no less praiseworthy. The British architecture mainly at Calcutta, like the civic buildings, the town hall, the Victoria Memorial, the Council House, the Writers Building, the Calcutta High Court, the original High Court structure, Fort William. These are the places of tourist importance. The Madras House, they had a pattern. Here we find out the Bombay Town Hall, the Bombay Town Hall of Colonel Thomas, the Lower Bombay of Engineers. Here you will find out the works of French neoclassicism. You know that architecturally France was in a very developed position. So some of these styles have been followed from the neoclassicism of the French. The Princess of a Museum, Wells Museum, which and the Gateway of India. It is a brilliant example of Anglo-Indian synthesis. So the Gateway of India, it is also a very great example. So the whole thing is this, that when we are going to discuss about the architectural style of the different regions, we must bear it in mind that India being a very big country, its different regions had their own uniqueness, had their own fundamental characteristics, which have been reflected on the walls of these architectures. These architectures, till today, they stand as a silent testimony to the architectural specificities, to the architectural genius of the Indian architects. Now let me come over to Unit 16, that is the architecture, the functional categories. So the functional utility of numerous architectures spread over time. What are the functional utility of these architectures? And some are very ancient, some are recent, some belong to medieval period, and the relevance of a monument for the society and the importance of a particular kind of architecture prevalent in a particular religion. When we find out the importance of a particular kind of architecture prevalent in a particular religion, you know that it serves as their identification mark. So a particular architecture of a particular region, it stands for their identity. It works as an identity card for the people of that religion. As I had pointed you earlier, during the course of my lecture, I had told you I belong to Odisha. Odisha is a state on the eastern part of India, but my identification mark is the great Jagannath temple. So the Jagannath temple architecture, along with the presence of Lord Jagannath. So, oh, you belong to land of Jagannath. So you see that architecture and the god is associated with the identity of his state. So the particular kind of architecture of a particular region is associated with the identity Taj Mahal. So I am from Taj Mahal area, means I am from North India, Agra. So Taj Mahal at times the architecture of a particular area is associated with my own identity. Then what is the relevance of a monument for this society architectural monument? Yes, it has its relevance because even if we are in the ultra modern 2023, still then our heritage, our identity, our legacy, it works as a root. So if your root is strong, naturally you can sustain all the hazards, all the problems, all the dangers. You can overcome all the problems. So the question is with your roots, and these things, they strengthen your root so that you can stand on firm footing. Then let us come to the functional utility of these architectural monuments which are spread over all over India over the time. So the functional category, when we are going to discuss, we can discuss all these architectures into 5 categories: the residential structure, the religious structure. Then we shall discuss about the ceremonial structure, the strategic structure, and the architecture of public utility. So now let me come to the first part of the residential architecture. The construction of houses of non-perishable material was found out mainly in the ancient cities. In ancient time, the non-perishable material were used for the construction of houses. And here we find out that the settlement of Harappa, Mohenjo-daro, Kalimbangam, these are the Harappan sites, show certain uniformity in their planning. So we find out uniformity in their planning, and no windows facing towards the street. The entrance of the houses were from the narrow lanes which cut the street into right angles. All the roads will cut the street in 90-degree angle. The surviving specimen of residential buildings, Harappan structure, give us a very high impression about their civic sense, their hygienic sense, etc. The most spectacular palace architecture is found among the Rajputs. Rajputs are a very powerful warring community of India, mainly found out in the state of Rajasthan. So they achieve a very picturesque contrast between the exercise of defense and the exercise of retreat. So here we find out that they were warring communities. So they were constructing their palaces. You have in your book the picture of Jaisalmer, the view of the fort and the town. Going through the pictures, even in the net you can see the pictures, you can get an idea about their architectural sites, and many Rajput rulers had extended their establishments to provide grand palaces. So their palaces were of very high order, and the private houses, the havelis of the rich, particularly of the notable persons with intriguing woodworks, give us the reminiscence of the oldest image of a prasada or palace. So the examples in Jaipur, Gwalior, Lakhari Bazaar, here you will find out the prosperous cities of Rajput, but the most important and impressive is that of Jaisalmer. So the mansion of Jaisalmer, it is so attractive that you will find out balconies, galleries, stories, then deeply armed your ladder, then the arches, floral panels, etc., etc. The whole thing is this, that in ancient period, in early medieval period, you will find out very good residential architectures. Coming to The religious architecture, as I had pointed you earlier, that religious architecture, Buddhist architecture, but at the same time, I had mentioned about the great bath of Mohenjo-daro. So that great bath of Mohenjo-daro, it had some religious purpose behind it. So the archaeologists feel that this part was, they feel that scholars believe the place was used for ritual bathing of kings and priests, and it appears to have been a part of ritual of the city life. It did not function as ordinary bathroom, but must have a sanctity provided by the rituals. So the great bath of Mohenjo-daro, it is in Harappan culture, it is a sign of your religious architecture. And also I had mentioned about stupas. I am not going to be elaborative on that point, that how the stupas, where the remains of Buddha has been preserved. It is another important thing that the construction, its maintenance of such monuments, they are all these require a very systematic program, and till today the preservation of these monuments, the artistic presentation of these monuments has drawn the attention of the tourists. The mosques are the religious places for the followers of the Islam being a community based religion expected to meet on every day, meeting of everybody at least once a week to offer namaz. So hence mosque in its function was a place of congregation, and there you will find out that this religious structure also has its own uniqueness. So this religious structure has its own uniqueness. The mosques, similar are the churches. The churches are associated with the religion of Christianity. So the mosques, the churches, the stupas, these are all. But one thing, they are all religious structures. Then come to the ceremonial structure. The ceremonial architecture in India has been dominated by the tombs and mausoleums. We have different types of tombs. So some of these works you will find out the tombs and the mausoleums. The tombs of Akbar, the Mughal tombs, the tombs of different Mughal rulers. The tomb of Akbar at your Sasaram, the tomb of Akbar, the tomb Taj Mahal. Taj Mahal is a tomb. So here we find out the tomb with veranda projecting different types of scenes, and these type of tombs, they stand for ceremonial purpose. So the tombs during the time of the Mughal period, the location of the tomb in the midst of an enclosed garden. Taj Mahal was constructed by Shah Jahan, and the practice of laying gardens around the structure had started quite early. So here you will find out that in the big tombs or in important mausoleums, you will find out the presence of the tombs and the presence of gardens. The today only excavated ruins of the gardens are visible. Two more gardens, Ram Bagh, Juhara Bagh, and different Shalimar Bagh, different types of gardens. The remains are now available, not the gardens in proper form, even though the tombs are being maintained in a proper way. Then the strategic, what are the strategic structure? The strategic, since ancient past, kings and rulers were fighting with each other to expand their territory. Therefore, it was the necessity for creating a structure for their own defense. In Harappan culture in earlier time, we find out the presence of the cities, a presence of the boundary walls, the practice of construction of fortification. It now gathered momentum with the march of time, the safety. for your own safety, for make yourself safety from the attack of the enemies. So the fortifications were built by Turkish and Mughal rulers. However, the use of artillery in the 15th and 16th century changed the fortification fundamentally. Now there came the construction of forts. What is the purpose? For the construction of the fort, the forts will be constructed for defensive purpose. In net, you can see the picture of Agra Fort, Delhi Fort, Allahabad Fort, Chittorgarh Fort, Gwalior Fort, Kumbhalgarh Fort. So in various parts of India, you will find out the presence of the forts. The forts were used for defense purpose, military establishments. If you will be attacked by the enemy, or how to make yourself safe and secure, and how to fight against the enemy, were the purpose for the construction of these forts. And even till today, these are very important places which attract thousands of tourists all over the world. The next important structure is the construction of public buildings for the welfare of the people. So right from the time of Harappan culture, you will find out your great bath. Even if it is a religious building, also it is a public building. It was not a private concern. It was meant for the use of the public. The great granary. So the granary discovered at Harappa and Mohenjo-daro, which was meant for the preservation of grain, it was a building meant for public utility. And in sarais, in medieval times, we find out the sarais, the rest sheds, are the most important public buildings introduced in India by the Turks or by the Muslims in the 13th century. The earliest mention of the existence of a sarai is in circa 1266. And other Muslim rulers, they have also built different sarais in Delhi and in the major land routes. They were meant for being your shelter to the pedestrians, to the trade community, etc. So the presence of the sarai cultures are basically the hotels. What are the sarai culture? Sarais are basically hotels located along the highways to promote the trade. They were managed by the local officials who were supposed to maintain the basic amenities, were supposed to manage the basic amenity and provide safety and security. You see that this public, we are discussing about the architecture of public utility. So when we are discussing about the architecture of public utility, the tradition of construction, the tradition of building of sarais, it occupy a very important position. As I pointed you earlier, this time that they were like modern hotels. They were like model hotels situated on the side of highway for the convenience of the tradesmen. And another important thing that there were bridges. The construction of bridges, small and medium on small size rivers. So on large rivers, there were the construction in the late part of the 19th century, and some of the surviving bridges which you must visit as a tourist. Gomti Bridge at Jaunpur, a medium-sized town in Uttar Pradesh. The bridge dates back to Akbar's period. So in Mughal period, the construction of Gomti Bridge, it is a very brilliant example. Then Gambhir Bridge at Chittorgarh in Rajasthan. So it is in 14th century AD or 3 CE it was constructed. Then Otharanala Bridge in Odisha, dating back to 11th century AD. If you visit the province of Odisha, and go to the town of pilgrimage for visiting Lord Jagannath, you have to cross a bridge that is called Atharanala, having 18 arches, and it was supposed to be constructed in the early decades of 11th century. And so far as the Howrah Bridge, which is a pre-independence bridge constructed by the Englishmen. At that time, it was a very attractive hanging bridge, and till today it is there, which justifies the architectural skill of the architect, and it is also meant for public utility. So I now made a general discussion on your fifth unit, that the functional categories. What are the functional categories in architecture? So these are the different types of architecture: the architecture of a public utility, the architecture of strategic utility, the architecture of ceremonial category, the architecture of religious category, the architecture of residential category. So now the last part of our discussion will be on Unit 17, and that is sculpture. So whatever I discussed almost for 1.5 hours, if not totally half an hour, 1 hour, 20 minutes, it was on architecture. But an architecture without sculptural representation, it is not attractive. It is not attractive, and architecture gets a full-fledged of life with sculptural representation. Sculpture is the action of art. What is sculpture? Sculpture is an action of art creating dimensional works of art and hand materials by carving, modeling, casting, etc. So, in the work of architecture, if you have sculptural representation, the architecture becomes more attractive. And besides that, individually, if on a piece of stone or on a metal, if you will even on a wood, you can have your sculptural representation, and the person who does the sculpture is called a sculptor. Sculpture is the work, Sculptor. Sculptor is the person concerned. So one who does architecture is architect. One who does sculpture is a sculptor. So coming to Indian context, in the early period of Harappan civilization, you will find out the image of a bronze dancing girl in G20 summit, which was conducted last month in India. In front of the gate of that pedestal or the stage, you will find out the picture of the dancing girl. From the archaeological remains of Harappan culture, one bronze statue of a dancing girl, a girl in dancing form, has been found out, and that is a very brilliant specimen of the sculptural skill of our architecture, of our sculptors. So on the bronze metal, they had carved out the image of a dancing girl. Besides that, numerous seals have been found out from the Harappan sites, and on the body of these seals, you will find out the sculptural representation of animals, certain pictures of animals, certain trees, the picture of some human figure, most probably demigod with the horns on the head. So my point is that in early phase of Indian history, the sculptors, they used to have their sculptural representation. So the Harappan seals, we find out where in your book you will find out the picture of the dancing girl. You will find out the picture of the Harappan seals. So you will find out the picture of a wild buffalo, a dancing girl, and also different pictures. And in Mauryan period, during the time of Maurya period, we find out a very brilliant epoch, brilliant chapter in the sculptural history of India. King Ashok was a Buddhist king. He now made fine arts as a potent instrument for the propagation of Buddhism. So he now erected the pillars, monolithic pillars on various places of India, and he inscribed his edicts, and the capital of each pillar, the down portion of each pillar, was decorated with sculptural representation of animal, horse, lion, and the bull. And the lustrous polish of the pillar with a lotus upon which the pillar stood, it was another brilliant specimen. So here we find out that the sculptural representation or the work of the sculpture, it now became more and more attractive during the time of the Mauryan period. And also we find out that Didarganj in India, you find out a statue has been found out. Here the statue of Didarganj of Jakhini. Jakhinis are the demigods, so they are very artistic of these figures. In Sunga period, Sunga is another dynasty like Mauryan dynasty. During the time of Sunga rule, we also find out the sculptures of different types of gods and goddesses, demigods and goddesses in various parts of India have been found out. The Kushana period, Kushana is another period, and you see it was during this time the Buddhists, the Buddhists, they began to worship the image of Buddha. So as the Buddhists, they now began to worship the image of Buddha. So the Buddhist images, there were the construction of stupa, chaitya and pillar, but now the images of Buddha in different designs, it began to appear. So the construction of Buddha, the Buddhist monks, it now began to appear with the Kushana period. And in Gupta period, we find out that the Hindu temples, they are where the sculptural representation of different types of scenes from the Hindu mythology. So different types of scenes, they were engraved on, from Hindu mythology, were engraved on the walls of those temples, Jashoda with Balaram and Krishna, Ramayana, Nanda, then Ganga, Jamuna, Vishnu, Varaha. So the images were now carved out on the walls of the temple. Then another important thing, the Pratihara temple. Pratihara is the name of a dynasty, and in central India in 8th and the 9th century, we find out a number of wooden sculpture has come into existence, and they are very much decorated with a single bend of sculptural niches, pillars with lotus designs, elephants on the walls, carved beneath luxuriant scroll works. So the Pratihara temples, they were being decorated with different types of presentation of nymph and different types of demigoddesses. Then Chandela style. Khajuraho is a place in central India, and that is very important place. Khajuraho festival is being organized there. Khajuraho festival is organized there to attract the tourists, and Khajuraho is a principal site of sculptural activities. In 10th and 11th century AD, the Chandela rulers, the ruling dynasty of this area was Chandela ruler, and these Chandela rulers, they had their building activities. So the Khajuraho temples, they are famous for their sculptural representations. And the description of birds, beasts, humans or the celestial beings, constitute the chief mode of sculptural art of the ancient Hindus as well as Jains as well as Buddhists. Similar type of animal motifs were carved in sculptural in red sandstone within the monument of Akbar at Agra at Fatehpur Sikri. I told you 18 kilometers away from Agra there is Fatehpur Sikri. You will find out beautiful architectural representation of Akbar, and those architectural works of the architecture has been decorated with sculptural representation. So all these things, the South Indian streams, so far as South India is concerned, in the southern Indian parts also, during the time of Pallava rule, you will find out various types of bronze images. So various types of bronze images have been found out in South India, and during the Chola period, these are the names of the dynasties. So you will find out the image of different types of god and goddesses on your stone. And the image of Parvati from Tanjavur, now in Tanjavur Art Gallery, is a brilliant specimen of Chola sculpture. Then we find out the metal art. So different types of metals in bronze, in copper, and in Ashtadhatu metal, you will find out the work of these sculptures. If you come to Orissa, there is a very beautiful piece of sculptural representation, the Temple of Konark, which has been attached with that of your UNESCO heritage site. So much sculptural representation that the entire contemporary social life, you can gather information from the sculpture of the temple, the entire contemporary social life, their food and dress habit, the different types of references to the society and that of your culture, their trade and commercial activities, etc., etc. So the sculptural works on the walls, they serve not only the purpose of decoration, not only the purpose of art, but also it serves the purpose of providing information of the contemporary period, and at the same time, it also justifies the artistic genius of the sculptor. Dear participants, you see that architecture and sculpture, they are very much associated with fine arts. So you had your discussion on the performing art, dance, music, painting, theater, cinema. These are all performing arts. But this architecture, sculpture, painting, they are associated with only art. They cannot be performed. They are not performing, they do not come under the category of performing art, but they are the very brilliant aspect of fine art category. In today's class, I just gave you a broad outline. I gave you a broad outline on the main architectural style which are prevalent in India, the regional architecture to some extent, the functional categories of architecture. Then the last part of my discussion was devoted to sculpture. So now I think with this I must complete the block today, and the rest 20 minutes we must have interaction with you. The whole thing is this, that what I told you, this is a part of Indian culture. You as outsider, you have very little idea, and by making yourself acquainted with architecture and sculpture, you are gradually enter into the various phases or various parts of Indian culture. What are the same things? Architectural, brilliant architectural piece of your country, the piece of sculpture, important piece of sculptural representation in your country. If you make a comparative study, how it is associated with a country's tradition, legacy, history, all these things, you can get a very good idea. So I will be very happy if you interact with me on this issue and we can find out the relevance of the study on a comparative basis. So I now invite interaction. I now invite questions from you so that we can interact in a proper manner. Yes. No, no interaction. You don't want to interact with me. What I found out that you are not in a mood to interact with your ma'am. That she is only telling about India and we are, it is big. Thank you for the mind-grabbing presentation, ma'am. Only by offering thanks is not enough. It should be followed by interaction. So with interaction, I can also get some of the glimpses of your architectural heritage and also of your sculptural heritage. You just give me some idea. We have some questions, yes? Ask me what you want to know. Yes, what is the question? Either Ahmad Musa raised a hand. Yes, tell me, what is your question?
Now, um, as you mentioned, Taj Mahal architecture are part of Indian architecture. You mentioned Taj Mahal, which is created in 1653, as I heard about it, and it is said that Taj Mahal is the famous Indian architecture. Uh,
Yeah.
is it the years that Taj Mahal was created make it the famous, or is it the size of the place or the history of the place? It is
You
said
are
it's the
talking of
famous.
Taj
Why?
Mahal?
What make it? Ma'am?
You are talking of Taj Mahal.
Yes,
Yes?
I'm talking of Taj Mahal. It is said Taj
Taj
Mahal is the
Mahal.
famous architecture. Yes,
It is
it
a
is the
very
famous
famous,
architecture in India,
it is
isn't it?
regarded as one of the seven wonders of medieval world, not modern world. And it is very attractive. It is a tomb. It was the tomb of Shahjahan's wife Mumtaz Mahal. The ruler who had constructed it, he was Shah Jahan, a Mughal ruler. It was in the memory of his wife Mumtaz Mahal. It is situated on the bank of a river, Jamuna. Jamuna is the name of a river, and the city is Agra. It is situated on the bank of the river Jamuna in the city of Agra in the state of Uttar Pradesh. It is made of marble, and around that tomb or Taj Mahal, Mumtaz ki, the name of the queen was Mumtaz. So in her name it is called Taj Mahal, and it is a brilliant exposition of Indo-Islamic architecture. If you will go on studying the architectural designs, the architectural characteristic of this monument, it will take 2 hours. But outwardly, just a look into the structure, you will be amazed to see it is called the Dream on Marble. It is made of marble stone. It is called a Dream on Marble and having a garden culture around it. I told you that the Mughals had the habit of creating gardens. So, in a geometric form, in a calculative form, how the gardens have been carved out around it, that is also very worth attracting for the tourists. And in full moon night, if you visit Taj Mahal on bank of river Yamuna, I am sure you will be simply amazed with its artistic beauty. A must visit for all the tourists all over the world, and also it stands as a monument of love. Monument of love and romance, because Shahjahan had constructed this structure in the memory of his wife, Mumtaz Mahal. Could you get the idea?
Yes, yes, sir. Thank you, ma.
Yes.
Thank you.
He asked me the question, the architecture
And
had their
ma,
role. Tell me.
ma, it says that Taj Mahal is a famous architecture. What makes it famous in India? Say the famous. What make it famous?
It is a grand structure, very beautiful, very attractive. That is why it is famous. There is a structure in India called Qutub Minar. A minar, a pillar, like Eiffel Tower of your Italian France, that Pisa, it is a tower. You must visit it. So because of its artistic beauty, it has drawn the attention of the people all over the world. You today see it in the net. You today see in the net, but when you will actually see in your naked eye, you will be simply immersed with that marble representation, the stones used in the structure, the glazing of the stone, the designs, everything, the calligraphy, the foliation, the geometric designs, the minars, the domes, everything is attractive. Mr. Kabir, you asked me what is the relation of these architectures with religious ceremonies. Yes, the religious structures, there are some religious structures. Suppose the stupas, the chaityas, the stupas are the places of worship. The chaityas are meant for residential structures, stupas, because it contains the mortal remains of Buddha. They are places of worship. Suppose your mosque. Mosque is a place of worship. Church is a place of worship. So those structures which are associated with religion, so naturally they have their religious sanctity. In every, suppose in temple, you are going for a Jagannath temple, so it has got its own sanctity. For the people of Hindu religion, mosques have got their sanctity for their Islam. So every structure, religious structures, they have with them the religious sanctity. That is very important. And as I told you, Taj Mahal is the tomb. So there you will find out, if you will enter, you will find out that tomb where Mumtaz, she was buried, etc. It is still there. There is prayer there. You can have your prayer there. You can have your namaz there. People utter it. You will like it. I must, those who are listening to my lecture, I must tell you, I must suggest you, if you get a chance, visit that spot. It is worth visiting. You will not be loser, rather you will be gainer if you come across with the scenic beauty of this architecture. In Africa, tell me the name of any structure which is very attractive. Noted, ma'am, thank you. So can you give me the name of a structure in your country which is very attractive? No, you are not going to tell me. You don't want to disclose. All right. Dear students, you see, I took 5 of your classes. We can tell you some, then tell me the name, some names you refer. We can carry on the discussion accordingly. The rest 3 blocks it remained. So if today's class is on architecture, tomorrow's class will be on archaeology and antiquity. Then the class will be on handicraft, its continuity and changes. Handicraft, handicraft of clay, stone, wood, metal, ivory, coral, gems and jewelry, textile and costumes. Then the block 8 and 9, I will take one class, tribal culture, so I'll mix up the two and I will complete it. So I have only 3 classes more, but I am not feeling encouraging because you are not giving me, you are not interacting with me. Interaction makes the class lively. So if you will interact in a proper manner, naturally I will be more elated. But you are not interacting. I am only talking and talking for 2 hours. For a teacher to talk for continuously 2 hours is not a very easy task. That's why I am telling you, you interact with me 10 minutes more. Madam Adamu joined. Anyhow, today I gave you a name of some places. Any question?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me, please?
Actually, I couldn't follow. What are you telling?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me, please?
You write me, I will interact. You write me.
Okay, ma'am. Okay.
So no more interaction. So I want to continue for 10 minutes more so that by 5 we will all leave. Now it is 51 past 4, 9 minutes more. So 9 minutes left. We can have some little interaction to continue for 9 minutes. No interaction. Anyhow, so I must suggest you that because you have enrolled yourself for this course, so because you are outsider, very little idea about this paper, whenever you are listening to any name, try to go through nets, at least in the net, as you asked me about Taj Mahal, Qutub Minar, Buland Darwaja, Jama Masjid, Falaknama, Mysore Palace, Jaisalmer Fort, etc. Different types of forts, these are the structures. And the sculptures, as I told you, the dancing girl from Harappa, the seals of Harappa, we have Kano city walls located in the Kano. So what is that Kano city wall, where it is located? Kano. So Mr. Kabiru, he wrote me about your Kano city wall. It is like Great Wall of China, very lengthy wall. Or a very wall with having sculptural representation, etc., etc. I don't know. I must see it in the net. What is Kano city wall? The walls are, yes. The walls are a UNESCO World Heritage Site. I must see it in the net today. What is Kano city wall? Definitely, it must be having a very rich cultural antiquity behind it. Otherwise, it should not have been accepted as a World Heritage Site. So, World Heritage Site means it is having some significance. So similarly, to the Kailasnath temple, I told you about Kailasnath temple. Kailasnath means Shiva, Lord Shiva's temple, entire rock. A piece of a rock has been cut out into temples. So brilliant piece of architecture, a masterpiece of architecture. You will find out that how Kailasnath temple rock cut architecture. So some things, because India is a country having a remote history, remote antiquity, so you will find out different architectural representations. In the net, if you will go through the pictures also, you can get some idea so that you can reproduce it in a proper manner in your examination paper for which you have enrolled yourself in this course. Anyhow, so when I am going to discuss about archaeology and antiquity As you know, it will be discussed in tomorrow's class, architecture and sculpture. So the man architectural style, the regional architectural style, the functional categories and sculpture you must take into consideration. And when you will take it into consideration, you can get a very full-fledged view. And architecture is very important from tourism standpoint because these are associated, these are very attractive and they are very much associated with tourism. So when a tourist is coming to a foreign country, what he will see? He wants to see something, the new place, their own heritage, their history. We have Juma Rock located is a natural geographical. Acha, Juma Rock. Yes, I got two important places geographically. I got the point. Like your Niagara Falls, your Cano City, Juma Rock. Yes, I am very happy that you have already given me to, it is a Niagara 100 Naira banknote. Baba. Juma Rock. Yes. So with interaction, at least I got two names. I will see it, Cano City and Juma Rock. So they have their own uniqueness for which they have been tagged with UNESCO heritage status. So in India, you will find out 35 to 38 heritage sites because it is a big country. And so far as culture is concerned, these architectures, your Taj Mahal is a heritage site. As I told you, the Konark Temple for its architectural representation, it is a heritage site. So the status is given, sometimes status is given for geography, but they are given the status for their architectural representation. So architecture, when we are going to cover, naturally it covers a very big aspect of Indian culture. And the tourists, they must visit all these sites as a near, if you come to Taj Mahal, 18 kilometers away from Taj Mahal, there was the ancient capital, Fatehpur Sikri of Akbar, a Mughal ruler. The entire structure is made of red sandstone. The problem over here is tourism is not encouraged in the country. Time is moving very fast. The conservative temperament of the people, they are gradually going to be replaced with modernization. So here we find out the tourist temperament will come. It will take some time, but you have to adjust with the modern day world. Because you have to adjust with the modern world, the conservative attitude, the orthodox attitude, the people who doesn't like to, people who do not travel, tourism is like a book. If you will not travel, you cannot read the book, means the entire world. World is a village. I know that tourism, conservatism, orthodoxism is there, but we are moving faster. And I hope, I am in an optimistic tone, that in near future, definitely there will be a change in the attitude and temperament. Even in India, 50 years back, what we are there, we have advanced a lot. The same will be also in your case. And I hope the people will develop a tourist temperament. If not tourism possible, see it in the picture. Always it is not possible to come to this way. Excuse me. So we find out the attitude of the people will definitely undergo a lot of change in the march of time. And I hope all the participants who are listening to my lecture and who have enrolled yourself in this course, definitely in future will like to visit India. Anyhow, dear students, this much for this class. And with this, I completed the class. Again, good afternoon to you all. And again, we will meet in tomorrow's class sharply at 3 p.m. I will definitely join at 3. So join me sharply, and I will stop sharply at 5. Now it is 4 past 1 minute left and it will be over. So all the participants, again I am very much thankful to you for giving me a patient hearing. Again, thank you all.